So, good evening, everybody. I wanted to make a quick video because I think this is absolutely awesome and absolutely cool. First of all, most of you who know me know that I am a science geek and I love science and I love to talk about science. But here's the thing. Here's why I'm making this video. There's a lot of people out there who do not know that a lot of the theories that we talk about today, such as the theory of relativity, basically Einstein making the theory of relativity, that in order for Einstein's theory of relativity to have even functioned from the beginning, he had to invent an idea. He had to insert new mathematics basically just to fill in the holes. Basically meaning this. As he was creating the theory of relativity worked mathematically until he inserted gravity into the equation. Once he inserted gravity into the equation, then it didn't work. His theory fell apart. So he had to insert a new idea that he just kind of invented, that he just created. And then by the invented, created idea, basically he filled the gaps. He filled the spaces. Okay, so kind of if you can at least understand that, then you can understand that a lot of people don't realize, even some atheists, even people who feel like they're very scientific, whether they're believers or not, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of these theories we teach as fact is based on these huge gaps that have invented pieces of them in order for the theory to mathematically work. Okay, so why is this important? It's important because I'm watching a video on science, and I'm watching a video called Einstein's Biggest Blunder. And the coolest thing about this is it talks about gravity and relativity and the universe and all this kind of stuff. There's a new theory called the theory of expansion, which talks about the universe expanding. Now, the really cool and most awesome thing about this is what you're about to see. I just want you to listen, and I think you'll be excited.
To see what this means, imagine that we could travel back in time. We would see the universe shrinking rather than expanding. But our view of it would shrink even faster because our horizon would be shrinking at the fastest possible speed, the speed of light. Galaxies that are visible today would have been invisible to us in the past, and to each other. So the early universe was divided up into small islands, isolated inside their own small horizons. This picture of a disconnected universe flies directly in the face of the idea of a single balancing process needed to solve the flatness problem.
All right, so what he's basically saying is, according to this mathematical equation, if we track back the expansion universe all the way back to whatever, it would go beyond our understanding, and it would be that the universe has all these little bubbles. But he's like, that flies directly in the face of, so this theory and this theory, so that doesn't work. So they're trying to figure that theory out. So watch.
Confused? So were the cosmologists. The only way around this horizon problem was to assume that the entire region we see today started out so tiny it could fit inside a single horizon.
Which is the Big Bang.
This idea, called inflation, was first
the
proposed
inflation
by
idea.
Alan Guth, and then developed by Paul Steinhardt and his colleague Andy Albrecht.
Why they're in a bathroom, I
Today,
have no idea.
their version of inflation is widely accepted among scientists. But Andy Albrecht himself has never been wholly convinced by his own theory.
Now check this out. He says that this guy who created the expansion theory has been widely accepted by most scientists today. However, he himself is not fully convinced, and it tells you why.
What we have to do to make inflation work is invent an entirely new form of matter that exists in the early universe and then disappears, so we don't have it around today.
All right, did you hear that? What we have to do in order to make this work, right, the expansion theory, is we have to just invent an entirely new form of matter that used to exist but doesn't exist today. Now, he has a problem with it. Here's why.
And I was always left with a nagging feeling that if you invent so much, is inflation really the right thing to invent, or could nature...
Here's what he's basically saying. He's like, as a scientist, I had to make this mathematical equation work. Now remember, I didn't show you the part of this video, but before it talked about how Einstein's theory of relativity, Einstein had to do the exact same thing. There's a piece, basically his fabric of time, that's invented mathematics, man. Anyway, so here he's basically saying, after you invent so much, do you really have sound science? That's kind of what he's saying. Watch.
Chosen something else.
As a young researcher at Cambridge in the mid-1990s, Xiao Magejo was also skeptical about inflation.
I mean, because inflation is the only thing available, people cling to it just like to a lifeboat, and there is this feeling...
But some people need that, that's great. Well,
all right. You're getting to the point of this video where the most important thing happens. Check this out. The guy on the right, the guy on the left is the guy who created the theory of expansion, which is where the universe expanding. The guy on the right is saying, hey, I'm a little skeptical, just like you. You're the guy who invented this theory, and you're skeptical of it because you've had to invent stuff in order for it to work. The guy on the left is saying, you know, so many people cling to this theory of expansion. Why? Because it's all that they really have that matters. It's the only thing that actually makes sense, and so everybody's clinging to it like a lifeboat. Now, right as he says that, the guy on the left, the guy that invented this theory, says, and some people need that. That's what he said. Now watch this.
A bit extreme, you could say. You could solve all these fine-tuning problems using divine intervention.
Did you just hear that? He said, in an extreme scenario, you could solve all of these fine-tuning problems by using divine intervention. Did you hear that? By using divine intervention. I'm going to do this real quick. Play this one more time.
In the mid-1990s, Xiao Magejo was also skeptical about inflation.
Don't know what happened.
And I think inflation is
All right,
a scientifically acceptable way to invoke divine intervention. It's
okay, well, I think that's a bit...
Now watch.
In the mid-1990s, Xiao Magejo was also skeptical about inflation.
I mean, because inflation is the only thing available, people cling to it just like to a lifeboat, and there is this feeling...
But some people need that, that's
some people need that.
Extreme, you could say. You could solve all these fine-tuning problems using divine intervention. And I think inflation is a scientifically acceptable way to invoke divine intervention. It's
okay, well, I think that's a bit...
Wow. He says, I think this is a scientific way to invoke divine intervention. And he has basically used this to say that divine intervention can fill the fine-tuning problems the same way that this guy just invented an idea, the same way that this guy invented matter that didn't exist before, is the same way that you can invent and fix all these fine-tuning problems using divine intervention. Now, this is a really, really important part. My baby's crying in the background. Check this out. Here's what's so awesome about this, man. What's so awesome about this is that... I'm just going to let her cry for a second. Thank you. What's so awesome about this is this guy is basically saying at first, he said, remember, if you listen to it, he said, people need that to believe in that theory. I'm going to do this one more time because it's super important. Watch.
People cling to it just like to a lifeboat, and there is this feeling...
But some people need that, that's great. Well,
some people need that,
you could
it's
solve
great.
all these fine-tuning problems using divine intervention. And I think inflation is a scientifically acceptable way to invoke divine intervention. It's
okay, well, I think that's a bit over the top, but there's enough open questions that we really need to think about it.
Now, here's the thing that got me. The guy says it's a bit over the top to invoke divine intervention. I want you to just look at their faces, man. This guy, he's like, yeah, divine intervention. If you can invoke and create some kind of matter, come on, man. All this fine-tuning can be fixed by divine intervention. This guy is a scientist. This guy, the creator of this theory, who also created this mathematic crap in order to explain his theory, you can look at him. He's thinking, he's like, divine intervention. Divine intervention. Maybe that's a bit over the top. But look at him. Does he sound certain? Does he look certain? This guy's got peace. This guy, he's got some concern because his entire world is coming down. Anyway, God bless you guys. I'm telling you, man, science is, the people who defend science, that proves God doesn't exist, they don't understand science. This is why I love science, and this is why I'm a believer that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the great I am. He's the eternal Father, Prince of Peace. He is the one way to the Father. He is the one way to eternal life and bliss. In Jesus' name. This guy knows it. This guy, he knows it too. He just don't want to know it. God bless.